What I want to do in this screencast is talk about object composition, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a point class that consists of two integers, and then I'm going to use the point class to create a line class. So we'll see how you can compose objects of objects of objects, or classes of classes of classes. The other thing is, and these will be very minimal implementations, because what I want to do is instrument the code so that we can see very precisely the call sequence of the constructors and the destructors, because a lot of this happens automatically and it's very important for you to understand. And then I'll follow this with a video lecture to kind of show exactly what's happening. So to define a point class, and this is going to be just a Cartesian point consisting of x and y in my private section. And then the public interface, I'm only going to implement three methods. I'm going to implement an explicit constructor. I am going to implement a print method so that we can see what's happening. And then I'm going to implement a destructor. A destructor for this class is not needed because it is built using the basic types, but I'm going to implement it and put a print statement in there so we can see exactly what's happening. So I said that I'm going to instrument the code so we can see the call sequence. And the way I'm going to do that is the first line of each method is simply going to print the method's name. And then it's going to perform its normal function. So in this case, I need to assign new x to x, and I need to assign new y to y. So there's my explicit constructor. My print method is going to, first of all, output that we entered it. And then it is going to perform its regular function, and in this case we'll just print out the x and y value in a Cartesian coordinate format. And I'll go ahead and do the indel. So that's my print method. And then my destructor has nothing to do, but I'm going to instrument it so it prints the name of the method. So that's my point class. Let me compile this. So no error messages. So let's look at what happens when I create a point object, and I'll pass in 3 and 4. I am going to call the print method on the point object, and just for reference I'll say starting, and then I'll copy this down here and say that we're finishing. And what we're going to see is, you'll see this message starting, then you'll see the message from the explicit constructor of the point class that I implemented. You'll see the call to the print method followed by the printing of the point 3, 4. Then you'll see the message finishing, and then you'll see the message that we get from the destructor. So this is similar to the video lecture on the destructor that I did before. And that's exactly what we see. Here's where we enter main. Here is the message from the explicit constructor, the message from the print method, the actual printing of the point, the finishing statement, and then just before main terminates completely, all of the objects get the message to destruct. So hopefully that's review from the previous. Well, now what I want to do is I want to use a point to build a line. I want to use the point class to implement the line class. And as we know, a line consists of 2 points. In this case, it'll be point 1 and point 2, or P1 and P2. I'm going to implement 3 methods. So I'm going to implement a constructor. And just for simplicity, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pass in X and Y values. We could implement a constructor where we pass in 2 point values, but that will generate some additional messages, and I'd like to avoid that so we can kind of focus on what the line class is doing by itself. That might be a good exercise for you to do. And although it's not needed, I'm also going to implement a destructor. So there's my public interface. So let's implement these methods. And again, I'm going to instrument, let me just copy this. I'm going to instrument the code so that we can see what's going on. This is going to print out line to indicate that we're in the constructor. And when this executes, and you'll see this, the point objects have already been constructed. So I can simply say for P1, I didn't implement set methods. All right, let me go back and quickly implement set methods. And I'm going to be a little sloppy here and just create a set method. That just sets. And I'm not going to instrument this method because I want to focus on the construction and destruction when we have these composed classes. Okay, so now I can pass X1 and Y1 to P1, and I can pass X2 and Y2 to P2. So that's my constructor. And the reason I have to do this is because P1 and P2 already exist. They've already been constructed, just like when I create a point object, X and Y have already been constructed. Now I'll implement a print method for my line class. And this is important. I already have a way of printing my points. What I don't want to do is re-implement the print method for the point class in the line class. To print a line, I print 2 points, and I already have a method for printing 2 points. And this won't be the best looking output in the world, but that's okay. Okay, let's do that. So there's my print method, and I need just to say that I'm in line print. And finally, I need to implement my destructor for the line class. Doesn't need to do anything, but to illustrate when it gets called, I will put this little message in there. All right, let me see if this compiles. Whoops. There's no matching function call. Okay, so I need to implement, it's telling me that it wants me to implement a default constructor, which I did not do. I will do that very quickly. So now what I'll do to differentiate between this one and this one, I'll write that. And here I want to set X and Y to null, to 0. See if that compiles. And now it's telling me that on 66, I bet I forgot my constant. Nope. Oh, I see what I did. This should be called print, not point. Okay, now it compiles. So let's go back and look at main. So we've already gone through this example. I want to do essentially the same thing with line, L, and then I'm going to pass in 3, 4, and 6, 7. Those will be the coordinates. And then I'm going to print the line. Now keep in mind that, so first of all, we're going to see a lot of output, and that's exactly the point of this example. I'm constructing a line object here, and I'll be able to draw pictures in the video lecture, but I'm constructing a line point here, a line object. Well, a line consists of 2 points, and each point consists of an X and a Y. And so all the constructors are going to get called in this particular instance. And then when we call line print, we're also making calls to point print. Then when main terminates, we have several objects that we need to destruct. We need to destruct the line object, but we also need to destruct its 2 point objects. And so all these destructors will get called. So now I compile this and I run it, and you can see that there are a lot more things going on here. So here we have the message that we're starting, and we're actually creating the line object here, but we first construct its 2 point objects using its default constructor. So even though we're creating the line, the default constructor of the point objects execute first. Then we execute the default constructor of the line class. Remember, I said that the point objects already existed by the time we execute that code. Well, not only do they exist, they've also been constructed. Then we call the print method of the line class, and the first thing it does is it calls the print method on the first object P1. Then the print method of the line class prints this little dash string here. Then we make another call to the print method of the point class for the second point object, P2. Finally, we print the statement finishing, and now the destructors execute. We first execute, or it first executes the destructor of the line class, and then we see a message for each point of the line class. And that's it. So it's very important to understand this call sequence, and as you compose more and more and more complex objects, a lot of this stuff happens automatically. So when you're just creating a line, but by virtue of the fact that it consists of 2 points, its constructor executes to make sure that when it's time for you to assign values to those 2 points, they've been constructed properly. And when we finish using our line object and its destructor executes, the destructors of the point class make sure that they're deallocated properly.